This module covers research in dermatology. Why do we care about research? Research provides an opportunity for you to expand your knowledge on evidence-based medicine by reading the research and the literature that's out there and then deciding other ways that you can fill in gaps. It helps you to be better able to understand the literature because if you go through the process of performing research and conducting research, you'll be able to better read articles and understand the inner workings. That helps you advance patient care, address unmet needs, and if you stay in academics or even if you don't, it helps you create a niche for your career by identifying areas that you can do the most good. What you're going to hear from everybody when you say you're ready to apply to derm or interested in applying to derm is you need research for a strong dermatology application. So why does research help you match? It demonstrates that you've got a passion for dermatology and you have potential to make a positive impact in the field. You have recognized gaps and you get things done to make things better for patients and for the field in general. It also, more importantly, demonstrates your ability to complete a project. The ACGME has a requirement for residents to complete research projects and get publications, so showing that you can do it as a student lets us know that you'll be able to continue to do it as a resident, which is something that we are held accountable for as program directors and faculty. It's also a great opportunity to impress your mentor. You can showcase your skills, your drive, your time management abilities. That leads to an awesome letter of recommendation and could even lead to some personal outreach where your mentor reaches out to colleagues to let them know that they have a really great applicant that they don't want to miss. So my favorite thing is when I have a student who's so good that I say, this student's awesome, she got a publication, and I got to put my name on it, and she did almost all the work. I feel a little bit guilty that she even needed me. So that's your goal. You want to drive a project to completion. It gets a publication for you and your mentor, and it makes your mentor's life easier. So what is research? As you can see from this bar, there's the things that we know on the left, and then on the right side, there's a big area of things we don't know. Within the things we don't know are the things we don't know that will actually make a difference. So these are the things that could improve the lives of patients or revolutionize the way we treat a disease or understand or diagnose a disease. Then there's also a big chunk of stuff that we don't know that doesn't matter. You know, things that are irrelevant, like how many Kleenexes does someone with psoriasis buy a year? I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not related to their disease. So it's a challenge when you're a medical student because you start thinking about dermatology, you don't know what we know, much less what we don't know or what we don't know that will make a difference. But there are some steps you can take to help to recognize those things and realize opportunities for research. This is a review of the hierarchy of evidence. So starting at the bottom is the lowest quality of evidence and moving up, it's higher. And then same thing with the bias. The highest risk of bias at the bottom and lower as you move up, starting with expert opinion to case reports, then going to cohort studies, randomized trials, and all the way up to meta-analyses of randomized trials. So it also is sort of a surrogate for the ease of completing the research. You know, the things at the bottom that are the lower quality of evidence are a little bit easier to get done quickly, whereas the things higher up may take a little bit more time and effort and energy, but the payoff is a lot greater. These are some aspects of your home dermatology department that you should consider when thinking about doing research with them. If you don't have a home department, this can also apply to your mentor or someone you're working with on research. So you want to ask them questions about the department or your mentor, like, do they have a lab with a full-time or bench researcher? Do they do clinical trials? Do they have a research coordinator? Do they have research fellows? All of these things will influence what type of research you're able to do with the department or your mentor. You can also ask about what are they successful in accomplishing? Is it mostly case reports, case series, review articles, surveys, population health projects, or special interests of your mentor or the department or people you're working with, because then they might have active research going on in those areas. What are some of the challenges we face in helping our mentees get research accomplishments in dermatology? Often derm programs are small and departments are small. Our faculty are typically clinician educators and not researchers, though there may be some researchers on the faculty. We often have really high patient care demands that limit our time to do research, and we often have many more students than projects available. So that gives us a limited capacity to add projects because faculty are already at their limit of what they can do. But I put an asterisk there because if you do go about it the right way, your mentor will be able to add research projects because it won't require much effort from them. So the big thing here is we get tons of students coming to us saying, do you have any research projects I can help with? The answer is almost always no, but that doesn't mean you need to give up on research. Also, I keep saying research, but don't forget that scholarly activities is more than what we traditionally think of as research or clinical research or basic science research. So other aspects that can count are quality improvement. Quality improvement projects can lead to publications and presentations just as much as research projects. Medical education and projects in how to improve the curriculum for med students or for residents can be great projects that can get attention of program directors and people in academic medicine. Wellness activities, advocacy activities that you do in terms of political action can also be useful. And then addressing health disparities. So don't forget that scholarly activity is more than just research. And if you have passion in other realms, then pursue those interests and just find ways to get publications or get presentations out of those projects if appropriate. So we talked a little bit about some of the different types of research and the effort and time that they're required. So if you look to the top right, there's case reports and case series. You're going to do, as a student, you'll probably do the initial write-up. You may be teamed up with a resident. You might be able to identify patients that are interesting cases when you're on rotations. If everyone sort of thinks this is interesting, it might be a good case report. And you can get these done in days to weeks to even months. So you can usually turn around a case report in a weekend, sometimes even in a night. So these can get done quickly. The challenge with case reports is every med student in the country is doing them and submitting them, so it's hard to get them accepted. You really want to make sure that it's a really novel case or something really interesting before you put in the work of writing it up. For a review paper in the bottom left, you might be responsible for doing a lot of the background research, the literature search, and then you might do the initial write-up. You might again work with a resident or even a group of students along with the faculty mentor. And these you can again get done pretty quickly. You can control it. Basically, when you have the time to do the literature search and write the manuscript, you can do it. The top left is if you're going to conduct original research or studies. You want to make sure that you take ownership of the project. You want to drive it to completion, and we'll talk more about that later. Make timelines and keep your deadlines. Deadlines keep everybody on task, and if you don't have a deadline, things tend to get put on the back burner and you don't get to them. You may write the IRB, do the background research, be involved with the study design. This may be more of a commitment because, as we'll talk about in a couple slides, recruitment means you've got to get those patients in, and you can't control that all the time. And then don't forget that there are also non-publication projects, so those other things we talked about. So those you can complete in a short term. It could be one part of a larger project. You can still list the experience on your application even if it doesn't lead to a publication. And it might lead to something publishable, but you can talk about that at the beginning too. So this could involve quality improvement or educational things or just other projects that help out the department or help the residents or help the other fellow medical students. Some of the challenges we face in research: lack of funding, lack of experience by medical students, residents, and sometimes even faculty, the time to put in the work, the dedication to get it done, support for things like statistical analysis, and then challenges with recruitment, which means getting those patients, if you're doing a study on a certain disease state, getting patients with that disease state in the door so that you get enough numbers to complete your trial, which can take months to years. What are the steps in conducting research? So you want to develop your hypothesis. That's the question that you're answering or the hypothesis you're testing. You draft your protocol. You have to get IRB approval, especially if it involves human research. Then you recruit and collect your data. You do your data analysis. You draft the manuscript. Then you submit that manuscript to journals. Then they reject it or give you feedback. You review it. You resubmit it. Be prepared that often the first journal you submit to is not going to be where it eventually gets accepted, or at least the first draft you submit is going to require some revisions. And then if you have limited or no research experience, there's actually a step before developing your hypothesis, and that is to learn how to do research. So we have a lot of students come to us and ask, do you have research I can help with? But the students who are most successful in getting research and in matching to derm are the students who already come in knowing how to do research, or they've taught themselves to do the basic, or they've had experiences that teach them how to do research, because they're more successful at using all of our time to be more efficient. So if you have very limited experience, your mentor may be able to walk you through and teach you how to do research, but it'll really be on you to try to get those skills as much as you can on your own. So we'll talk about that a lot more. And then when it comes to the IRB, we have a separate module that you can review to kind of really dive into what the IRB is all about. Developing your hypothesis. You want to choose a topic, a disease. Think about what your interests are. If you have special interests in a certain disease state, if you have a personal connection or family connection, and then also your mentor's interests. A lot of mentors will have a niche within medicine, certain disease states that they're particularly interested in or working on. And what if you don't? What if you don't know these things, right? You're a medical student. You haven't learned derm yet. The American Academy of Dermatology on their website, aad.org, has a medical student curriculum. It's pretty easy to review. They're just self-directed modules, so you can go through those and see if anything catches your attention, a particular disease that you would like to learn more about. Then use your library's resource to pull a textbook in dermatology, whether it be the physical copy or online, and read the chapter in the textbook about that disease. If you aren't sure which textbook is the best, you can reach out to your mentor or a resident in the dermatology department, find out what textbook they're using. Even if you Google, a lot of dermatology residencies will post notes about their curriculum online, so you can see some of the most common textbooks that we like to use. Then you can go to the literature to learn more about that disease state. So use Google Scholar, use PubMed, look if there are gaps in the literature, knowledge gaps about that disease, or just read some of the most recent articles and research that's going on around that disease, because that will further inspire you to have ideas for a hypothesis. And then you can also read dermatology journals, including the JAMA Dermatology and the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology, also known as the JAD. You don't have to read it cover to cover, just kind of flipping through, reading the titles of the articles, maybe reading the abstracts for some, will help you get a good idea of what's going on in derm research. Then, once you have your hypothesis, background research is so important. The worst thing you can do is design a whole study, carry it out, write the manuscript, submit it, only to have a reviewer tell you, somebody already did this. This didn't even need to be done. So you want to make sure you're not doing something if it's already been done. So that's a big first step. And it's not always so easy. So you have to make sure you have some skills in searching the literature just to make sure you cover your bases and make sure that it hasn't been published already. Sometimes librarians at your institution can help you to be better at doing literature searches to find what you're looking for. Then, the other part of the background research is helping you to think about what you're going to do. So what's your hypothesis? How are you going to test it? What validated outcome measures will you use to measure if patients are getting better or not? Is it feasible? Is this such a rare disease that the whole department has only seen it once in the last 10 years, and you're going to design a study that requires 20 people with the disease to show up? Is it innovative? Is it novel? Has it been done already? Is it ethical? Is it something that the IRB is going to accept as ethical practice or not? And then is it relevant? And the way you think about relevance is, what is the reader going to do with the information from our study? How are they going to change their practice? Or how is it going to change the research landscape for this disease state? The next step is drafting your protocol. If you've read a scientific paper before, the protocol is sort of like the introduction and the methods. So you write the background or the rationale, what's already known about this topic and why is this research important. Then you look at your objectives, what you're trying to answer as your hypothesis, what participant population you're going to be studying, your inclusion and exclusion criteria, your methods, including your data collection, analysis, and stats plan, and your references. This is going to take multiple drafts to get it right, and you're going to come up with questions as you're drafting them. You're going to start to think about what you're going to do and what you're going to measure, and then you're going to say, okay, wait, what tool are we going to use to measure improvement in these patients? And is that important for our research? And do we predict that will measure the improvement that we see? So this is where you're sort of learning what's been done, and sometimes you can look at similar studies. If there's a study of the same disease and they used a particular tool, like for psoriasis, we have the PASI, P-A-S-I. It's a really well-established tool to measure how someone's psoriasis is doing. So you can learn from the literature so that you can figure out what you're going to do. As I mentioned, there's a whole nother module for the IRB, or Institutional Review Board, but very briefly, they have to approve all human research to make sure that it's ethical and it's okay to do and that patients are consented properly. There's often resources on the IRB website, including resources about getting started in research. So that can be a really good place to look when you're getting started. They often or almost always have some prerequisite training that you have to do that shows you have the basic competency in understanding human research and ethics. You're going to write your protocol first and then do the IRB paperwork, because writing your protocol will help you to answer all the IRB questions. There are different categories of approval. There's full board, which is the most intense human research, and then there's expedited or exempt categories that you can see on your IRB program's website, what qualifies for each of those, and they're all based on the risk to the patient. If there are significant risks, it's full board. If there's no risks, it might be expedited or exempt. And just remember that this process can take multiple months, especially if you're looking at full board approval, because a lot of IRBs will only meet once a month or twice a month. So when you need to make changes based on their recommendations, you have to wait till the next month to resubmit. Recruitment. So this can be challenging and require time, and you may not be able to control it. So this is if you decide to study a certain disease, then you have to wait for patients with that disease to show up so that you can offer them to participate in the study. Now, sometimes you can get around it if there are ways to reach out to your patients with that disease, or if it's a survey study where you can simply send a survey to every patient that you've seen in the last few years with that disease. Or sometimes you can even go where people are. So there have been studies that have to do with, different hair care practices and the risk of alopecia. And people might go somewhere like a salon to interview people, or you can go to certain meetings or events and kind of recruit people from there if they fit your study population. For example, there's a big twin festival in Twinsburg, Ohio every summer. So if you want to do twin studies, that's a great place to meet a whole bunch of twins at the same time. But recruitment can be a challenge, and it's something you need to think about when you're thinking about the timeline for finishing your research. So in terms of what your mentor has as competing interests, always remember that we want to dedicate and make a lot of time and attention and make you feel like you're the only mentee we have and the only thing going on in our life, but the reality is you're not. So we have competing interests with patient care, supervising and educating residents and students. We've got multiple projects with different students and residents going on at the same time that require demands on our time. We have our administrative duties, and hopefully we can fit a little bit of personal life in there too. So what you can do as a mentee is try to make your relationship as little work as possible for your mentor. Make it easy for us, and we can help you even more. And don't forget too that non-derm faculty may have a greater need for help when it comes to research. So usually in the derm department, we're bombarded with lots of students asking us if they can help with research. Some other specialties don't have that problem, or they might have much bigger departments where they have a bigger capacity. So don't be afraid to ask other mentors or other faculty you've worked with if they could use help with research projects, because all research is good research. It counts almost the same for your application. The only advantage with derm stuff is that it's easier to talk about it on interviews, but the other accomplishments are just as valuable. So let's talk a little bit about two different students. First is the average student. I'm interested in dermatology and would like to get involved with research. That translates to, I want research to help me match to derm. Will you do a lot of work to help me make that happen? And what the faculty are also thinking of is, also 12 other students asked me to do a lot of work for them already. So you're number 13. As opposed to the above average student. And the above average student is who you're competing with when you're applying to derm. So this is who you want to strive to be. You want to be this awesome applicant. So they come and say, I'm interested in dermatology research. If you're willing to provide guidance and mentorship, I'm excited to drive a project to completion. And what I hear is, I want to do the work to get research done. I know you're busy and want to make your life easier. And that makes me excited. This is the kind of student who I love to work with because they get things done and help me in the process of helping them. So ideally, you're going to take ownership of your projects. Make sure that you are the one driving it to completion. If at any point you're wondering, what's holding our project up? Find out if it's you or find out who it is and try to get things moving again. Don't just wait for someone to come to you and say, hey, when are we going to finish that project? Try to do the whole thing by yourself. You're not going to be able to, but try to. Your mentor can provide guidance and support. Ask your mentor when questions come up, but really the success of the project depends on you 99%. So that's the difference between people who get research in derm and who don't, is the student. And that's why it's an important factor when you're applying, because we know that the people who got a lot of research done did a lot of work themselves and know how to solve problems and are self-starters. So when it comes to learning how to do research, do what you would do anytime you're trying to learn something else. Google it, check YouTube, use online resources, ask the research department at your school to help you out and give you some guidance. And then you really want to be able to impress your mentor with your skills and abilities. So this, like I said, this is a great opportunity to showcase how great you are at getting things done and what a go-getter you are. You've just got to make sure that that's the abilities that you're showcasing. So when questions come up, always try to find the answer yourself. Then present your question, your proposed solution, and the evidence to support your choice. So let's run through some examples. You're doing a trial and you want to measure a new treatment for a disease and you aren't sure how to measure if people are getting better. So you go to your mentor, one person comes to their mentor and says, what outcome measure tool should we use? That's a tough question. I'll answer it as your mentor, but I'm going to add it to my to-do list. I'll get to it within the next few months. I'll have time to go and do that research and figure it out. A little better than that is to say, I found 3 outcome measures that we could use. Which do you think is best? That'll take me less time to answer as your mentor because now I just have 3 things I need to look at and do a little research instead of this broader topic that I have to figure out. But the best of all is a student who comes and says, I found 3 outcome measures that we could use. I think this suits our project best because of X, Y, Z. Do you agree? I can answer that question right here and right now because you've presented me with everything I need to answer the question. So the project doesn't have to wait for me to get through my to-do list of all the other things that are on it. We can just move forward. So that's what you want to strive to do. Think of your mentor as a magic 8-ball. If you come and say, do you have a research project for me? Maybe. I don't know what to do next. Ask again. I'll help you out, but I've got to go and research and figure it out myself. So ask again later and we'll come back to that. And then there's a delay in your project. Versus if you say, I researched the answer to our question. Do you agree? That's when you can get a yes and move on. So here's a little quote from me. The students who get research publications and match to dermatology are the students who make my life easier. They drive the publication and receive my best letter of recommendation. But I bet if you asked your mentors, they would agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Don't forget there are some other resources out there. This is from our Wayne State IRB website, where there's a lot of resources about getting started. And don't forget that you can look at other schools' websites too. A lot of times I pick and choose from different schools about their IRB websites or their research websites and find the things that I find most useful. You can also work with other students. If you have a derm interest group at your school, that's a great way to connect with people who've been successful in doing derm research and can help guide you, especially in those early years. If you don't have one, you can start one at your school and then kind of get together the like-minded people interested in derm. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this module. We really do appreciate your feedback because we want to make improvements and make these even more useful and beneficial to everyone. So if you scan this QR code, it will link you to a survey. Please feel free to leave any feedback that you think would be helpful. Thanks so much.